The Dying Breed Movie Club meets the movies with your host, Phil Congleton, guest starring Corey Yaktus and Randy Petras. Special commentary by Chris Mich. Music by Garth Ivan. Illustrations by Joshua Taback. Directed and edited by Phil Congleton. Episode 4, The Avengers.
A few weeks ago, on May 4th, 2012, the much-anticipated Joss Whedon-directed Marvel's Avengers film came out in theaters, and to commemorate the release of that film, we will talk about the 5 movies that preceded this one. Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America, the First Avenger. Once that is completed, we will give our reviews for The Avengers. Greetings from the Thunderdome Bar in Salisburyville, Pennsylvania. My name is Phil Congleton. First, let me introduce my guest. He is an accomplished video editor, producer, and filmmaker, and is well-versed in the comic book movie craze, Mr. Corey Yaktus.
Hi, yay.
He is a skillful administrator in the IT field and a big movie buff and comic book fan, Randy Petras.
Hello, everyone.
How is everybody?
I'm fantastic.
Doing well.
Our good friend Mike Gleason was supposed to join us, but he's under the weather. So we're going to try and go along with this with the 3 of us.
I think we can handle it.
I think one of us talking could be fine.
Yeah, well, you and I are chatterboxes.
Yeah, I got no problem. I talk to nothing very often. I had Spider-Man comic books growing up, and that's about it.
Really?
I'm not a comic book aficionado. I couldn't.
You're more of
tell
a
you
comic book
anything.
movie fan.
I like movies, and I love the idea of the comic book movies, but it's just one other hobby that I would have to put so much time into. And I have way too many hobbies.
Yeah. I started collecting in 1974. And I managed to keep collecting all the way up until like maybe, I want to say like 1993. And then, being as it was the 70s and 80s, you could go to comic book stores and stuff and get back issues and the books and stuff. And so I can actually go all the way back to the issue number 1 of Fantastic Four in 1961. Whoa. All the way up to probably the mid-90s is like my experience. And then I had to quit because it was just too expensive. So were you a collector at all?
For many years, yeah. I started breathing in 1974, so I didn't start collecting right then. But I started collecting in high school in the mid-'80s, mid to late 80s, and collected through college. And you're right, at that time, getting back issues was much easier. There were a lot of comic book conventions in the area.
I used to love 50% off day.
Yeah, those were great. And a lot of times getting the back issues for entire runs of stuff was much easier than it is today. Mm-hmm. I collected for years until about college. Got out of it, and then got back into it when the Ultimate Marvel stuff started up after I had graduated from college and had some money and some free time.
I wasn't a huge fan of the Ultimates. I actually came back in for like 1 year in like 2003, I think it was, and that's when the Ultimates hit.
Well, I liked it because having been out of it for a while, it was a good jumping on point for me, and I liked the way they handled the characters in what is now sort of the modern way that they're handling a lot of the characters just in the regular titles, where they would give a full story arc, and so I liked what they did in that.
I'm glad you brought up the Ultimates, though, because you do see some of the Ultimates stuff creeping into some of the movies.
Absolutely.
I mean, they do try and hold strong with the original origins and stuff like that, but then every now and then you see some of this alternate stuff come in. They usually just try to update things so they make a little bit more sense.
They update a lot, yeah.
Like I mean, I don't want to jump the gun, but like in Iron Man, the first one takes place in Vietnam.
So they updated.
They updated to Afghanistan,
yes.
And I think he builds like a rocket launcher as opposed to a missile in the movie or something like that, and
yeah, I understand that you have to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah. And that's what I like about a lot of the movies, the Marvel movies, is they take the elements from all these universes and all the old stuff and all the new stuff and try and bring it in.
And they have a lot to work from. They really do.
Yeah, and it's good because they don't piss off the old readers. They don't piss off the new readers. They don't piss off the haters.
I can't imagine how hard it is to walk that line, because the people who are into it, who live this, who have their entire basement filled with boxes of comics, how you can't piss them off.
I don't have my entire basement
really.
filled.
Yeah, I actually,
to be that into it, I would be mad if they changed the origins of things, like big changes.
Yeah, and they've done a really great job since Marvel took back the licenses for most of their characters. I think that started with the Iron Man franchise, and they did a great job in the movies of keeping everything consistent, keeping everything true to the original character, and only changing that stuff that was sort of window dressing. They kept the origins all very much the same. How would you have walked that line another way? I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, we'll bring back some of the Ultimate stuff when it comes to that as well.
And one other thing, our friend Chris Mich sent us back a story about how he attended Free Comic Book Day, which took place right around the same weekend that the Avengers came out.
Free Comic Book Day is an annual event where there are participating comic book stores, and they give it's exactly as it sounds. They give out free comic books. Now, back in the day, you'd go to a comic book store and they'd have maybe 1 or 3 titles. It's grown since then, and now there's like shelves and shelves of stuff. As you know, I have 5 kids, and I'm always trying to come up with new things. And on Saturdays, I usually have my 2 boys that are 11 and 9 and my youngest girl who's 2.
Yeah.
So we do mystery trips once in a while where you get in the car, you don't know where you're going. And our mystery trip was to a comic book store for Free Comic Book Day. Now, when I was looking at the map as far as participating stores, I had the choice of driving to a store I went to in the past and have gotten into fights with the people that work there, because arguing, of course, over Star Wars trivia, or go to a news store. But the news store was a little farther away, and I'm like, you know what? These guys haven't been in the store, and I know this store has some pretty cool artwork and statues and stuff. We're gonna go to that store, and I'll just deal with whatever I got to deal with.
Yeah.
Not anticipating the problem that I encountered. So I, as we're driving there, I explained to my 2 sons, I said, this is going to be a great people watching type of scenario. You're going to see all types of people in the store that work there, and never in my wildest dreams did I picture what was going to happen. So we get to the store, and my kids are excited, as they should be. We're going to get free comics. I mean, how can you beat that? And I made it very clear to them, bring money. I'll let you buy 1 or 2 titles. I mean, again, to your point, comics are expensive, so you can't buy too much, at least not on our budget. But I said, I want you guys to really enjoy this. This is a nice thing. So
you're being a good dad. Very cool.
I'm trying, and they rated their piggy banks, and I thought that, this is cool. This is something that I had as a kid, and I want them to experience as well. So we go into the store, and we get there about 15, 20 minutes after it opens, and there's already I guess 24 people in the store. And so we walk up to the cashier, and I like things like this. You know what I mean? I like not only getting the free stuff, but I like events that really aren't events, if that makes sense. Like I just get into that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm dragging my kids. I'm pushing my 2-year-old in the stroller. It doesn't work very well. And we go up to the cashier, and the cashier is a guy you would expect to be working in a comic book store. He's got the messed up hair. He's got 5 lip rings. He's got tats all over. And I saw my 9 and 11-year-old kind of back off a little bit, but when I talked to this guy at the cashier, of course, he was incredibly helpful, incredibly friendly, and I really enjoyed kind of geeking out about it.
Yeah.
He was really nice, and he explained how they weren't going to do stuff, whatever. And I saw a line was forming to check out, so naturally I moved on, and I wanted to browse and whatever. So we got our free comics, and then I had a couple questions. There was a couple titles I was looking for. So I see someone standing in the back of the store where it's a little more secluded, and he's got like a Justin Bieber hairdo and a beard and the flannel, and he's, I'm going to say, in his mid-30s. And I say to this guy, excuse me, do you work here? Which I know is an annoying question, whether you work there or not. But he was staring at a fluorescent light, so I thought this probably won't piss him off too much. Yeah. So at any rate, do you work here? And this guy, of course, he gives me that, and I say, look, I'm looking for this title. Do you know if it's available or not? No, it hasn't come out yet. So I will start to walk away. Thank you. And I start to walk away. Oh, hey, sir, excuse me. And he turns around again. Now I've really I've merited the face of now this guy's bothering me.
Yeah.
Even though there's no other customer around, and this is this guy's job.
This jerk coming in here asking questions.
Gosh, he's got to ask me a third question. How dare he? So I said to him, "Can you tell me where the discount rack is? My sons are interested in picking up some, cheap comics." And he's like, "Oh, like the 25-cent rack that you're standing by," which is, admittedly, it was labeled small, but it was labeled. And I said, and I kind of joked like, "Almost bit me," type of thing. And he's like, "Ugh." So at any rate, this guy, he walks off. We shop. We get the titles we want. We go up to the cashier. And, of course, the cool guy at the cashier that we talked to earlier leaves. And the jerk that I had to deal with in the aisles takes over at the cashier. So I lean down to Luke and I go, "You're going to pay this guy in pennies." and Luke, of course, not wanting to rock the boat whatsoever, is like, "What?" And I was like, "Trust me." And Luke had in a Ziploc bag 100 pennies. And in another Ziploc bag, his coins, silver, dimes, nickels, and all that stuff. Of course, he had to segregate them, of course.
Yeah.
So we get up there and we lay out our 40 comics, 38 of which are free, and the 2 titles we're buying, and it's like whatever, it comes out to like $1.25, and I put out the bag of pennies, and the guy's like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, there's 100 pennies in there. You can count them if you want, but I've already counted them for you, and here's the 25 cents." And he dumps the bag of pennies and starts counting. And the owner, meanwhile, comes out and looks, and he looks at me in disbelief, like, "How dare you piss off this guy? Don't you know this guy gets angry at every he's not saying that, but he's looking at that." And I said to the owner, I said, "My 2 sons raided their piggy banks to come here today."
You wouldn't like me, comic guy, when I'm angry.
Yeah, right. So, and of course, we get done, we get our comics, and normally the people who work in the store will talk about a customer after they've left the store, or maybe earshot. Not this dude.
They didn't even wait.
Not this dude. I literally picked my comic. He didn't give me a receipt. He didn't say thank you. And as I pick up my comics and leave, he turns to the owner and goes, "That's it. I'm done for the day." So we did our part to piss off the comic book clerk.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Chris, for sharing that story. That is fantastic.
You're welcome. I look forward to hearing the rest of this podcast.
And here is Chris's promo for his Digging Star Wars audio blog podcast.
Digging Star Wars, the online journal of the films that inspired George Lucas to create the Star Wars saga. Please look for our next episode on diggingstarwars.blogspot.com. With that in mind, think, post, and accept my thanks for listening.
Just like the evolution of the original comics in the 60s. Sure, Spider-Man had his own thing, the X-Men and Fantastic Four had their own thing, but what to do with the rest of Marvel's early original characters? Big titles like Thor, Captain America, and even the second biggest character in Marvel history after Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, all had their growing pains, mostly related to bad sales at the newsstands, reworking of titles, experimenting with supporting characters, etc., etc. The next course of action would be to bring these characters together. So just like the comics themselves, Marvel set forth with a plan for the film franchises, and that plan started with 2008's Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau. Basically, starts out just like the comics did. Tony Stark's in a war-torn country, being Afghanistan for this movie. Gets blown up by one of his own bombs and gets taken hostage. And he has an injury that he needs a magnetic thing shoved in his chest to keep shrapnel from going into his heart. And his captors want him to basically build them a bomb. So he, while trying to build the bomb, he secretly builds a Iron Man suit that he uses to escape. Thus is the beginning of Iron Man. He gets back to New York City, and just like the comic, a bad guy shows up.
That's pretty much it.
I mean, movie in a nutshell.
But as a guilty pleasure, I'm not a big fan of Iron Man. To me, it feels like it's just a movie about a guy in an iron suit. It didn't feel like an Iron Man movie. And that's why I like the second one so much, because it actually feels like an Iron Man movie.
I loved it.
I loved it too. I mean, the music, the editing.
Yep.
Robert Downey Jr. could remake the Teddy Ruxpin series on TV, and I would think it would be cool.
He just handled Tony Stark so perfectly.
Yes.
He's snarky yet likable.
But yeah, so you're okay with how much of a dick he is.
Yeah, he's a complete jerk, but you love him, and he plays the millionaire playboy up. He does such a great job with it. I love that movie. I think it really kicks off the Marvel movies together. And I just watched it as the marathon. We went to one of those movie taverns and watched the marathon.
Oh, did you do that?
I went, and it was fantastic.
Oh, nice.
And watching them all together and all in a row, picking up all the little Easter eggs that they're dropping and all the hints, you could see how it was developing. Like as the later movies come out, the Avengers is being more hinted at. And in Iron Man, a little bit, but not quite so much. You could see the technique of how they're putting the movies together evolve when you're watching them back to back. But that one really holds up. It's so much fun to watch.
When they picked Robert Downey Jr., I thought it was a perfect choice. The only thing I worried about was he was a little too old. But then through the magic of makeup in Hollywood, it works, and it's still working.
And they say that they're making these movies in a way that the characters are replaceable. I don't know how they would replace him. I mean, they've been through 3 banners already, and it's fine. Whatever, I don't care. But I don't know how they would get a new Tony Stark.
And that's probably a good thing that they went through 3 different banners, because it probably does make people go, okay, I can deal with a different actor just so long as it's not a loser,
Yeah.
Well, I hope they don't change Mark Ruffalo. I love him.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in the Avengers, but I agree.
I don't know what else to say about Iron Man. It's a great movie. It was so much fun. I watch it when it's on cable.
Yeah.
If it's on, it's one of those movies like, I'll just leave this out.
Yep, I do the same thing. If I see it on in the background, I'm perfectly happy to watch it.
Yeah, grade?
B-. Sorry.
That's painful. That wounds me.
Yeah.
A+ for me. I loved it.
Don't get me wrong. Downey Jr. was great. Jeff Bridges.
Was
great.
Phenomenal.
Yes. Tony Stark was able to create it in a cave with scraps.
Nice. You rehearsed that. Yeah.
Love the line.
And the CGI is great. Everything is fine. I just did not like the. I thought it should have ended after the fighter pilot scene. They capture the bad guy in the end. It bothered me that it was so cliche that he gets in. Jeff Bridges gets his own little robot or his own little suit. And
but I mean that's kind of what the whole movie was about.
Yeah.
He was trying to get the technology. He was trying to figure out what it was, and then he had to steal it from Tony's.
And he was always a jerk in the movies, and he was always part. And they handled that right from the comics. They said he was part of the company, and he ended up double crossing Tony. That was straight out of the comics.
Yeah,
that was great.
I loved all of it. I have a question, and I'm sure both of you can answer this. The Black Sabbath song Iron Man, the story that it tells is about a guy that was turned to steel in the Great Magnetic Field. What the hell are they talking about?
It has nothing to do with Iron Man.
What Iron Man are they talking about?
I love that song. Yeah, it's just a character from their song. It has nothing to do with the
comic books. Because that's what always confused me. I'm like,
But he wasn't turned to steel,
Nope.
and then people ran. So they made up the story. They could have called him something else other than Iron Man to avoid confusion for me.
Yeah,
yes, they could have, but Iron Man
called
wasn't as popular a character when they wrote the song.
That was another thing that bothered me about the movie. I hated that Iron Man song. It just ruined it for me.
I love that song.
AC/DC in the second one, that was cool.
Shoot the thrill.
I like that too.
I give it an A only because I gotta have room to grow with the grades.
I watched the fighter pilot scene twice this past week, and it's just unbelievably good.
Yeah, it's
where he's underneath the jet, and I just thought that was fantastic.
I love the phone conversation between him and Rhodey.
Yep.
It's just, it's me.
Yeah.
It's me.
I also like the little robot that keeps trying to put Robert Downey Jr. out when he's supposed to be on fire. But he's not.
A lot of gags with the robots.
And it had
those are good.
the noises that made it happy or sad or confused.
Yep.
Yeah, it was cute.
So I'm sorry, I'm B-. Corey is A, and Randy
A+.
A+.
Love it.
Cool. All right. We move on to The Incredible Hulk, directed by Louis Leterrier. I like to break up the Marvel movies into two generations. The first generation being the X-Men movies, the Spider-Man movies, Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Elektra, those, the Punishers. And then the second generation are these Avenger movies. And the interesting thing about the Hulk movies is the first one seems to be more of the first generation, while the second movie, the Incredible Hulk, is more of the second generation group.
And that's correct, because the Marvel Entertainment Group, I believe, took control of the movies, starting with Iron Man, and the second Incredible Hulk movie was the first Incredible Hulk, and the other ones you mentioned were all handled by other companies, Sony and I forget what the various picture companies were that handled them, but I think that was the break.
That's cool that you say that, because I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of it actually working out that way.
Yeah, I think it is in fact that way.
Because you can just watching them, you can see a subtle difference in feeling and all that. And
there's a big difference in tone.
So the Incredible Hulk movie opens up. We kind of skip the origin story just to get right into it, because I think everyone has heard the origin.
Well, they montage it.
Yeah, they montage it in the opening credits.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it ties back to the original
the 70s show.
TV series more than it does the first movie.
And Bruce Banner is hiding in Brazil. He's trying to find a cure. He's got a contact named Mr. Blue who is helping him out. General Ross, his arch rival,
Thunderbolt Ross,
is trying to hunt him down, and he manages to get a lead, and they go to get him. And
they try to capture him down in Rio, and he escapes, and he needs to make his way up north to get some research with his Mr. Blue contact.
He escapes him that first time. Yeah.
Right, he needs to get back in touch with Betty Ross, his ex-girlfriend and General Ross's daughter, and they track him at that point to her work, which is some university,
and another storyline develops where they're trying to duplicate the super soldier serum that's
right, he does mention that.
Yeah,
correct.
And
another tie-in with the Avengers to tie it all together.
The bad guy, I can't pronounce his name, but he's a Russian.
Blonsky.
Yes.
Emil Blonsky.
Yeah, and but he gets involved with some of the super soldier serum and gets turned into the Abomination. And then, we got two monsters fighting, and we got Liv Tyler as Betty Ross getting in trouble and everything. I love this movie. It's a B+ for me.
This movie was King Kong. This movie was Beauty and the Beast. It's like, there were 3 moments in there where he's like all raging and wrecking crap, and all of a sudden Liv Tyler comes running up and with her puppy dog eyes and goes, "Oh, Bruce, are you in there?" And Hulk would just be, "Rah! Oh, pretty Betty." 3 times. I get it. After the first one, 3 times.
He only says Betty once.
Yes,
he says 3. He has 3 lines.
Okay, but still, it seemed like Beauty and the Beast to me. If there was a musical number and a singing teapot, it would have been Beauty and the Beast.
No, I can see the Beauty and the Beast thing. I can see that.
Just didn't like. I get that he doesn't want to be the Hulk, and the whole movie is like, "I don't want this in me. I don't want this," and he's experimenting and trying to get it out of him and stuff. And then at the end, the Abomination is made, and he's up in the helicopter, and he goes, "It has to be me. It has to be me." He's been fighting the whole movie not to do it, and suddenly, there's a use for it?
Yeah.
Maybe I can
But that always happens.
This requires an application of strength.
Yeah,
Yes.
This requires the Hulk, and...
Here's the best part, too. Abomination is up, ripping up the streets, killing babies, I'm sure they're in cars.
It was horrible, yeah.
Just wrecking everything.
They showed people
He
flying.
gets up on top of the building, and the Hulk finally gets the chain around his neck, and he's choking him, and then freaking Liv Tyler comes up and goes, "Don't! Don't kill him! What are you going to rehabilitate the Abomination? What do you put him in a prison?
What do you do with him?
Yes,
you got him.
No.
As soon as the Hulk walks away, what do you do?
Yeah, he's going to get back up. All he did was joking. What did she think she's going to do?
A hero always has to take the moral high ground and not kill. So that's what that was all about.
BS! The Abomination isn't going to be like, he needs to die. He's not going to be reasoned with.
Yeah.
He's not going to be.
But he may also need to come back, so we can't kill him.
Yeah, but
off
where
that
are they going
easily.
to put him? All right, I give it a C.
Okay, that's fine.
It was still fun.
Yeah,
what we were talking about earlier was how they bring all the elements of the mythology of these characters into the movies. And what really makes me feel good inside watching this movie is all the stuff they brought from the comic book and the TV show. They've got the purple pants scene.
Yes.
They've got the...
well, in the opening credits, all of harkening back to the original TV
I love
series.
Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, Lou
the
Ferrigno's
courtship of
cameo
Betty's
also.
father.
The music.
Bill Bixby.
Yeah,
Did Lou
yeah.
Ferrigno do the Hulk voice in this one?
Yes.
I know he did in the first one.
He does the voice. The
voice
Hulk
for Hulk?
has 3 lines. Betty, Hulk Smash, and I forget what the other one was, but
It is Lou.
it's Lou Ferrigno doing the voice.
Which is
I thought it was
excellent,
very good.
because he's actually done it in the cartoon series over the years as well. So they, it's one of his favorite characters to play after seeing interviews with him. But it was a good movie. I mean, going back and watching it, it's a short movie too. It's only about an hour and
It's
20,
under 20.
around
It's under
40.
2 hours. It's, like
It's well under
1:50
2
or
hours,
something
and
like that.
and they actually make it a nice, quick, point to point to point movie. And honestly, the Hulk is such a tough character for a movie. He really lends himself
Very
to a
tough
serial.
sell. Very tough
And that's why his TV show was great, because it's the hunted man story arc works really well with the Hulk. Anything other than that is really tough to pull off because he's a monster. He's the monster that needs to be chased by the good guys. How do you pull that into a movie?
Yeah, and as much as you love Lou Ferrigno, the dude with the makeup just wasn't working it. Had to be upgraded, so you had...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Lou Ferrigno's big and all, but the real Hulk in the comic book is really
he's
big.
really big.
And even nowadays, I don't think you can find a wrestler or bodybuilder.
No,
I do sort of agree with some of the critics who said he did look like an upgraded version of Shrek in some ways.
Kinda.
I mean,
But
in the later one or the
in the first one,
Yeah.
in the first one. But they do fix that. They make him a darker green.
Yeah.
He looks a lot more human.
I like the character model in the second one much better. In the first one, he was a little too bulbous.
Yeah. And
Human proportions, even muscular, don't work that way.
And I also was reading that they put a green tint over the entire movie.
Yeah.
Just to bring that color out. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I am a B+, you're a C, and Randy...
I'll give it a solid B. I enjoy it, but it's not their best.
And they played the music from the TV series, which I thought was fantastic.
yeah, I have to agree.
When I went to bed last night, it was stuck in my head. All right, so we're leaving 2008, and we're moving on to 2010, when Iron Man 2 came out, the sequel to Iron Man 1. This one was also directed by Jon Favreau. Basically, Iron Man has established his career, so to speak, and he's actually trying to get out of the Tony Stark business. He wants to do the Iron Man thing full time, so he's trying to figure out what he's going to do with that. In the meantime, Mickey Rourke has a mad-on for Tony Stark because his family was pretty much destroyed by Tony Stark technology. So he's got this mad-on, and this dude's a genius too, and he knows how to make Iron Man suits too, and things like that. And he comes in to cause some trouble. And,
Yes, he does.
And the comic book fun ensues.
Yep.
Now, at the end of The Incredible Hulk, we're not giving anything away because it's not part of the story.
The bonus scene.
It's the bonus scene. It helped ties in things, but
yeah.
there's a scene with General Ross, which I thought was interesting that they used him, and Tony Stark, and they're talking about putting together a team. So now we come to Iron Man, and more things start to happen that get us closer to what the Avengers is going to be like, because Scarlett Johansson is in the film as the Black Widow. Her first time as the Black Widow. And I think she looks great in this movie because she got the long hair. She looks exactly like what the Black Widow does look like. And
She speaks Latin. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I still enjoyed it. The whole thing with bringing Don Cheadle in, or I just watch Boogie Nights, so
Yeah.
I love Don Cheadle. He's awesome.
Roddy Rhodes, he's Tony Stark's right-hand man. He's a military guy. I thought Terrence Howard looked the part, just like he was drawn in the comic book. I thought he looked the part, but I wasn't buying him as Roddy Rhodes.
Yeah.
And I think everyone on Earth felt the same way, because I thought he looked the part too, but I thought Don Cheadle acted the part.
Of course.
And I thought he was just too subdued, and the lines they gave him by the end of the first movie, I was actually laughing at him.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah, one thing, there's a lot of things about this movie that sort of had the Hollywood sequel curse. You know,
Yes.
what was cool in the first one, let's just make it bigger and cooler in this one. When he takes apart the whole structure of the pavilions and everything, and it's just giant room, and they just make it as and everything is just everywhere and cool as shit. It's just like, okay, you took that a little too far.
Yeah.
Okay, that was too much. And when he would change out of his suits and things, that was just... it just seemed like too much. It was okay.
Too technologically advanced.
Too technological.
That is
we
probably
had that technology.
Yeah, that is probably the only part of the Iron Man movies I really hate is the fact that he can like walk into his suit pretty much. You know. I mean, that's.
But if you go back, you know, if you want to compare it to the comics, I mean, the suit was as thin as cloth, but it had little magnetic repulsors in it, and he would wear it like a costume, like a regular costume hero, but it would be as hard as steel. And it's like, okay, this is better. This is at least believable that he has to have some apparatus to help him put it on.
In the first one, where he's standing on the one platform, I'll go with that. Because he can move his hands into it and be guided and stuff. But, you know.
But when he lands and walks and it's coming off of him as he walks.
It's too much.
I was a little mad.
Imagine the metal fabrication involved in that. And
but at the same time, he's Tony Stark.
Yeah, exactly.
So he has the apparatus to do
that's
all
pretty
that.
much That's pretty much the way you have to figure it out.
But the thing I didn't care for about this one was they spent so much time on that. You know, that whole thing with I'm being poisoned by the palladium element in the arc reactor in my chest, and let's find the solution to that, and blah blah blah, and let's go back to my dad, and let's do all this stuff. That just bored the heck out of me, and they spent so much time on it. It was such an important part of the movie, except it wasn't. It didn't do anything. They didn't go anywhere.
If they were about half as long as it was, I'd have been okay.
Yeah,
with
they could have
like,
taken that garbage out of there, and it would have been a better movie. Just give him an extra bad guy to fight. Give him something else to do. You know, a lot of movies use like that, like the Bond style sort of opening gambit where he goes and fights some generic something or another. They could have spent their time doing that. You know, have him knock down some lame bad guy. You know.
Yeah, something easy.
Anything. And just be like, I'm Tony Stark and I'm awesome. Then they could have spent their time doing something useful instead of spending all this time on that garbage.
Yeah, I know. That was kind of a drag on the film. Although I think they needed that to bring in Mickey Rourke a little bit more.
Which in his character, the whole I hate that element too. It's like when you find out that it's actually his father was with Stark, and then when they were first building the reactor, and he wanted to use it for bad, so Stark had him deported. So this kid's very angry, and instead of being logical about it and saying, well, your dad was going to manipulate it and misuse it, and he was a bad guy.
Right.
He's angry at the guy that deported him.
Right.
Why aren't you angry at your father for being a jackass?
Oh, maybe he wasn't. Maybe his dad, or at least the story he got, maybe his dad wasn't the bad guy.
Sure.
You know, Howard Stark was the bad guy in the tale he got. But either way, that's a pretty well-tread little story arc.
I hate that.
And I think they needed to bring Howard Stark into the forefront because he ends up being very important in later films too. Especially Captain America.
Yeah, when he's building his
the
particle accelerator. When he's building that, and Agent Coulson comes in, and he goes, give me that. Why do you have this? And he's got that's exactly what I need. Like, that's freaking fun.
I know. He just props up the thing, and that's it.
Put your back into it.
It's like the original shield from World War II or whatever that they discovered. But
there were great things about Iron Man 2, but it's just
there's a lot to
we
like
need more fighting. We need more explosions. We need more.
I'm a huge fan.
But we didn't mention the best part of that movie, in my opinion, was Justin Hammer. He stole that movie.
Yes. I love it when he came out and he's dancing. Better than a bunch of cheerleaders.
And he's fantastic.
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell he's fantastic in everything he's in. He's so great. I mean, enjoyed the heck out of him. He was a perfect bad guy. He's
smarmy, funny.
He has nothing to do with Iron Man per se. He's the anti-Tony Stark.
Yes, right.
He's Tony Stark, but like used car salesman smart. And just
cheated on his tests.
Yep,
I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Smart enough to be able to do that.
Smart enough to get into MIT, not enough to pass, and cheated off of Tony Stark. I mean, what a great character.
I'd love to, I just wonder how much he improvised in that. Because when he put the drone heads on, drone better. And he said, take that off. Try to fit your head in there. Can you fit your head in? No, try to fit your head in there. I can't.
Yeah, that's a great scene too.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm a huge Iron Man 2 fan. I like the fight scenes. I like the race car scene where Iron Man kicks the car away and the fight ensues. I thought the James Bond Iron Man suitcase was kind of strange.
That was stupid. I was going to mention that as well.
I liked it.
It was too small. That could have never been all of that. And you could never put a rocket engine in there that could propel him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that one flew.
Yeah.
But he still had to...
His pulsars, yeah.
But there had to be fuel somewhere for that.
That's his chest thing. That is the fuel for it.
If we had that technology.
Yeah, right. No, and they got into that a lot. That his arc reactor in his chest powers his suit.
Mm-hmm. The thing about Iron Man 2 that I really liked was they finally tackled his alcohol abuse issue slightly in the movie.
They at least talked about it.
Which was a huge deal in the 80s in the comic book. They did the alcohol issue. I don't even think it got the Comics Code approval thing.
There were more than a couple issues where they didn't get the Comics Code because he was drinking.
And I thought that was a neat thing that they keyed in on because that was always supposed to be kind of a big part of the whole mythos. He was an alcoholic. You know,
yeah, he's a guy running around in a suit of armor, equivalent to a battalion of tanks, and he's drunk.
And they do that scene where he's screwing around at the party, and Pepper gets pissed off, and
and that was good. That was a good scene.
Yeah. I like Don Cheadle. I thought his acting and the lines they gave him worked better, but I didn't think he looked the part. I mean, if he comes back for the third one, I'm in. I'm fine. Because I really don't know who could replace him to begin.
But you give this one
this one I give a B+.
I gave a B-. One thing I didn't like is what was Whiplash?
Yeah.
It's like he had giant whips with electricity.
Yeah.
I think those were so cool.
Really? Because if Tony wouldn't have used his little laser thing, he could have just went cut it in half.
Yeah.
And what good do those whips do? They reach, 20 feet?
Yeah.
And it's like, he's got rockets.
Yeah, Whiplash is kind of a lame bad guy. Just in general.
I will whip you. I can fly.
Hi-ya.
Look, you can't touch me.
So, I'm sorry, what grade did you say?
I give that one an A-. I like it a little less than the first one, but I enjoyed the heck out of it still.
Yeah,
it's a fun movie.
It's still fun.
Yeah.
And I still watch that when it's out.
And for its minor problems, it's still a great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and one backstory, when I came out of the movie theater, just like what happened to you, I came out of the movie theater and a thunderstorm came through and there were lightning bolts and everything. and I have video proof of it, which I'm going to try and put on this podcast.
What is this? Huh. Wonder what this is. Huh. I'll go check this out. I think I might put this over my mantle over the fireplace. This is beautiful. Looks almost like a hammer. It's really crazy. Whew. Man, is it hot out there today? Oh, man. Oh no, I forgot to do the laundry. I am Thor. Dost thou have a problem with that?
Okay, enough of that for now. In Thor, Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, is a scientist studying astro anomalies in the New Mexico desert when what looks like a wormhole opens up and drops in her lap the god of thunder, played by Chris Hemsworth. We are then treated to a flashback of sorts of how Thor got to Earth, which opens up depicting Thor in his native Asgard being crowned as the successor to the king's throne by his father Lord Odin, played by Anthony Hopkins. But danger lurks in the form of the bad guys led by Thor's conniving brother Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston. As tensions mount, Thor disobeys his father's orders and is banished to Earth. It is here where we see the convergence of the two worlds and the two plot lines. Thor begins to learn the lessons that all mortals do, while Loki conspires to destroy him back in Asgard. After being late for the last two movies, I thought I'd get a head start. Now I'm here a half an hour early, and I guess I'll find some food. And now a thunderstorm's coming through. Whoopee! Well, wish me luck. The Regal Edgemont Square Cinema 10 in Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, opened in 1996. It has stadium seating in selected auditoriums and digital sound. It is nicely tucked off of the highway in a very wooded area and has a nice atmosphere. Director Kenneth Branagh spins a wonderful film that is very loyal to the comic book mythos of Thor, while not keying in on glints of silliness that turn some fans off from the character throughout his 50-year evolution. And now if I can just get out of here and head home, once this rain stops, I will get going. Chris Hemsworth does an excellent job following Branagh's direction. The story is nicely built and the action and comic book styling is top-notch. The rain finally stopped. I met the frog, and now I'm going to head home. But Thor, pretty cool. The character development used to show the dysfunctionality of Odin and his two sons is quite good. Thor is a stand-up film and mimics why the Marvel Universe is the best. It gives you that jolt of fantasy while still holding on to reality. A nice addition to the Marvel movie franchise. The film starts off on Earth. Natalie Portman is a scientist who, yes,
Natalie Portman.
I could just watch her all
Lick
day.
stamps, yes.
Yes, yeah. She's a scientist she's trying to figure out like certain weather anomalies or things like that, and she's out on the desert, and all of a sudden this dude drops in her lap, pretty much.
And she hits him with his car, or with her car.
And us being the viewers realize this is Thor. Okay, we got the picture. So they do an interesting flashback back to Asgard, where Thor is from, and a backstory of how him and his father and his brother.
His brother Loki is the god of mischief, basically, which you don't necessarily get right at the beginning. You just get that, you know, he's sort of the Weasley little brother, and you know he kind of goads Thor into getting into trouble.
Well, he's also, you know, he's got the complex that everybody likes Thor more than me.
Exactly, and you find out why as that story progresses. I think using Kenneth Branagh to direct this thing was the best idea they could possibly make, because going into this, I was terrified about this movie.
Yeah, so
I was like, there's no way they can pull off Thor. He's such a comic booky character, and what they did when they wrote this thing, they went the opposite way. And instead of making a big science fiction-y movie or fantasy movie out of it, they made a small love story out of it. And it's like, what a brilliant way to take like this big god character and bring him down and make him, you know, human and relatable. Yeah. And they had the huge problem of mixing the mortal world and the Asgardian world, and they blended it perfectly. I can't thank them enough for pulling this movie off.
I always feel like I have to find something with the movie that was not necessarily a flaw, but something where I look at it and say, well, you know, I can't give it an A+ because of this.
Yeah.
I think in the very early part of the movie, Thor was like such a war-hungry kind of D-bag, and I'm going to prove how strong I am, and beat everybody up,
take
and
on
kill
the
them
ice
all,
giants or frost giants,
and then he gets banished to Earth, and in the course of a day, he realizes that I was wrong.
I was wrong. My entire life.
I was wrong.
And remember, he's an immortal god-type character.
Yes, he's been around for a while.
He's probably 10,000 years old, and he figures it out in a day.
The arc of his character it wouldn't look like an arc; it'd look more like an elevator.
Well, that's true. But I'll give that up to
But I'm alright with it. You know, that's like the only thing that I could be like. No.
Yeah. If you wanted to spread out his story over the course of 10 years, you could.
I'm okay with it.
If you go back into Thor's backstory a little, in the comic books, in the early days, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, Thor was actually a doctor named Donald Blake.
Dr. Donald Blake.
He was a human who discovers an ancient cane, and when he taps it on the ground 3 times, he turns into Thor.
That's true.
Wow.
Jane Foster was Donald Blake's girlfriend. So as we get into the 80s and 90s and the OOs, they revamped the story where they just took Donald Blake completely out.
Did they do that in the standard comics? I don't think so. In the typical Marvel universe, I think he's still Donald Blake when he's on Earth, and he's Thor, you know, when he transforms. It's the Ultimate Universe where they pulled him out, and this is one of those cases where they did change a lot of Thor's origin, but they were using the Ultimate Universe origin story where Thor is just Thor.
Yeah.
Right.
And he happens to be on Earth.
Yeah, because the story of Thor is much older than the 60s.
Absolutely.
So,
but the comic book incarnation of Thor,
the Marvel comics version.
Marvel's version of Thor.
It debuted in '62, I believe.
Yeah.
It was just a dude on Earth who tapped a cane.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And he
I'm glad they didn't go with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's true, because a lot of us were, again, before the movie, trying to figure out, it's like, well, how are they going to bring in Don Blake, and how is that going to work? And the answer is it wouldn't have.
Yeah. What they did was they take him out, but there's a scene where I think Thor is in the hospital and someone grabs a smock or something and says on it Blake, but whatever.
Oh,
they did an homage to that. But.
Yeah, they do a little gaff on it, and that's fine, little Easter egg to pick up. If you know the comic origins, then that's great. If not, it's a throwaway little scene that you forget about.
Here's why I have a problem with it as a comic book hero. It seems a little bit like cheating. Who's your comic book hero? A god?
Yeah.
Okay,
Demigod.
So, yeah, demigod. So it just seems like cheating.
Yeah,
it's like, you don't have to go through any real hardship.
I think Thor was
just a demigod.
I think Thor was supposed to be the Marvel Superman substitute of sorts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which I always thought Superman was absolutely cheating.
I agree with that.
You're faking all of it.
Yeah.
Stop a typhoon by punching your hands together? Really? That doesn't work.
So instead of going space alien, they went Norse god.
Sure.
So,
but I'm alright with, because he has.
Yeah.
But then for a bad guy, what do you bring in? He's a god. There's nothing on the planet you could be. You'd have to bring in another god.
Which they do.
Right. Which really
and that's another piece of this story that I thought the movie handled really well. Like, Loki is meant to be the god of mischief. He's meant to be a conniving, little weasel, and he doesn't do anything. All he does is convince everybody else to do stuff to end up getting his way. And in the course of the movie, he takes over Asgard.
Yeah.
He successfully, gets his father out of the picture, gets his brother, who is the successor, out of the picture, and all of Thor's friends are now having to bow down to him as king of Asgard. He wins.
Right.
The bad guy wins until Thor comes back and gets to trounce him in the end. Not to give away the ending, but he wins.
If you haven't seen it,
If you haven't seen it now, Thor's gonna win.
And
Fantastic.
Lord Odin is played by Anthony Hopkins.
Sure.
Perfect
Anthony
choice.
Hopkins.
yes.
And that
choice.
was great too. Because he's a skinny older guy. They put him in the armor, and he looks
Yeah. One of the magic of movies.
magic of movies, and that could have failed miserably. Another thing that was great about this movie was the costuming.
Oh, yeah.
Thor has, as we were saying before, like a lot of his origin was costume in the comics is really cheesy. They updated that in a way that made sense. It looked like ceremonial armor that, these high-tech magic whatever beings could possibly have.
Yeah.
It made sense.
Yeah.
The scene where Natalie Portman says to him, "Is this how you normally dress?"
Yeah.
More or less. Brilliant way
Great.
with that.
Yeah.
Did you guys remember a movie, Masters of the Universe, He-Man, when they traveled through the time portal and it's Dolph Lundgren and his friends, and they're all of a sudden like in an 80s neighborhood in these ridiculous
I still
outfits.
have to see
when
that
they
movie.
came to town for that first time, they're walking in, I'm like, that's He-Man. That was from He-Man. It's got, I got that same. Is there a Renaissance fair in town?
Yep.
It was just so awesome.
Now, the one thing I didn't like about Thor, and the thing that just didn't sit well for me, the way they handled some of Thor's B characters, the Warriors 3, didn't look right. They didn't act quite
didn't think
right.
so?
I didn't think, especially Volstagg. He was the one I thought was the worst offender, because he's supposed to be a big, corpulent, giant mess, and he was slightly overweight. Yeah, and I just wanted, Volstagg is a great character because he's sort of, the fat, funny guy in the Warriors 3 back up Thor and are his comic relief from the comics. And, I thought the one blonde guy, Fangrel was perfectly cast. He was great. I thought the other two were misses. And Sif, who is Thor's girlfriend in the comics.
Picked a beautiful actress.
Gorgeous girl, but and she was fine. She was good casting. That was a tough bit of the story too, because they sort of hinted that he and Sif had sort of a tension going on there,
Which is
and then they
always
totally drop it. Well, which is fine. When Thor is separate from Don Blake.
Yeah.
So now he's got these two girlfriends, and he's obviously seems like he's kind of a jerk because he's cheating on one of them.
True. Did it bother you about the little cliche about how Thor gets blown away by that one robot and
The Destroyer?
The Destroyer armor? It's just a suit of armor that is effectively immortal. It's a super powerful piece of Asgardian technology, I guess, magic, mystical technology.
I actually liked that.
I
knew it had to come.
Yeah.
Because he says whoever possesses this hammer, and I knew he had to be Thor for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So I knew that
It was
moment
coming,
was going to
yeah.
come.
Yes.
And I think the moment that he had as a human and talking to his warrior friends and talking to Nell and saying, get these people out of here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I was all right with that.
Yeah.
It was a superhero.
I'm
moment.
just a human. I
Yeah.
don't get in your way,
Exactly,
so I'm going to
and-
do my best
and-
to get people out of the way, and then takes over. Yeah, no,
That's why we watch movies like this.
And
great.
that was actually the whole lesson of the movie. That was what Odin wanted him to learn.
Right,
you
which
know?
clearly I knew he would, and clearly knew it was coming.
And it brings the whole film to a final.
No, he had
circle.
to sacrifice
Yeah.
himself for his friends instead of
Yeah.
being the warrior douchebag that he was at the beginning.
Right.
But yeah, I was really impressed with the movie. I really enjoyed it. I didn't really have. There were a couple of issues I had. I mean, I'm gonna give it an A-. I was like really thrilled with it. I walked out of the theater I just couldn't stop thinking about it for days.
Yeah.
So A- for me.
I give it an A. This movie, I walked in with low expectations and walked out blown away. I really enjoyed the hell out of it.
Same with me. I'd heard people say it was really good. I really liked it, so I didn't. I was like, I'll probably enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it in the theaters. I saw it on Blu-ray when it came out, and first I watched the whole thing, and I'm like, the movie was awesome. I think I watched it again 2 days later.
We
It
also
was just fun.
we also have to mention the tie-ins with the Avengers. We've got
The last scene.
we've got Phil Coulson making an appearance.
He's so good.
And we is Fury in it at all?
Fury is in it
He's
at
at
the
the
very,
very
end when the scientist guy that was working with Natalie Portman goes and has a talk with him, and you see in the background
You see
Loki is in
Yeah.
the reflection.
Oh yes, Natalie Portman's assistant or I guess was it
Mentor or whatever
he
he was,
was. He ends up in the Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a much bigger role in that.
And of course we mentioned the Black Widow, but we forgot to mention that there's a cameo by Hawkeye too.
Oh right.
That's
Yes,
right.
there's a
A
cameo
very
by
quick
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye cameo in that, which was great.
Captain America: The First Avenger, directed by Joe Johnston, and starring Chris Evans, who most of you probably remember as the Human Torch from the two Fantastic Four movies. I know, Randy, you hate the Fantastic Four movies.
I didn't hate the first one. I didn't like the second.
Back to Chris Evans.
Back to Chris Evans.
The point is, Chris Evans was the Human Torch
Yes.
in those movies, and the switching of his character from being the Human Torch to being, Captain America, Steve Rogers, was jarring for a lot of movie watchers. I think.
Me being one of them, that's one of the reasons why I didn't like this movie.
I'm alright with it.
You know what? It bothered me right up until I saw it, and I realized he was Captain America.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I will actually say something about that when we get to the Avengers. So the story follows the comic books pretty loyally.
Yep.
We're in World War II, which I was pretty surprised that they actually decided to do that. I figured they would just modernize it and go from
I'm
there.
glad they
but-
didn't.
There's no need to with Cap because he does have that piece in his origin where he does go to sleep during World War II and get frozen in ice and then get revived. So that is something that has been updated. That portion of it has been updated a lot in the comic book world and other media and stuff over the years because. Initially, it was just a quick convention that they used.
Yeah.
The Captain America comic books had been set in the 40s even by the time the 60s happened.
Yeah.
The Avengers, I think, started in the 60s, and they're like, all right, well, we want Cap in this team, so how are we going to do that? Oh, let's freeze him in ice, and then he can wake up. It was an issue-to-issue little thing that they threw in just so they could modernize Cap and he could be in the modern world.
Yeah.
And then the Captain America comic books restarted with him in the modern world doing his stuff. They kind of blew it off. It's like, all right, well, he's here. And ultimately, 40s to the 60s, it's a 20-year sleep. It's not that big a jump.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. When Captain America started in the 40s, the comic book company was called Timely Comics. And they had, like, the Submariner and a bunch of other guys that were back then, too. And, and the original Human Torch as well. There was a original Human Torch.
Wow.
And there was a nod to that in the film.
Yes, there was.
Because he was not a human being. He was a robot, so he was a synthetic man. And if you look in the World's Fair during the early scenes in Captain America while they're walking through the World's Fair, there's a big tube, guy in a red suit, and it's, the synthetic man. And so there is a shout out.
So it takes place in the 40s, and like Randy said, the Avengers started in '63, I think, and they bring him in. They bring in Captain America. I think what Marvel ended. I think Timely Comics kind of evolved into Marvel, and Marvel debuted with Fantastic Four #1.
Yeah.
And so we had the Avengers, and what they did was they brought the Red Skull back and a bunch of Nazis. And it still takes place in the 60s, but they're like hiding in some lost corner of Germany or something.
Right. I think they're actually in South America.
Yeah.
I think they had taken a hidden city or something, an underground city or something that they had made the Fifth Reich or something like that, where it's New Berlin or whatever.
So they blended that stuff together, so you got that feeling of World War II, but it was still the 60s. So, but we get to this movie and it's 2011, so they got to go from the 40s to 2011. The problem was back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the characters from World War II would resurface in the comic books after that, like Dum Dum Dugan.
Yep.
But unfortunately, you can't do that now. Dum Dum Dugan is in Captain America,
is in the movie,
but there's no way in hell they can bring him back in 2011 unless they do like a.
Well, originally,
the same thing they
Nick
did to
Fury
Captain
was a World War II character as well.
Yeah.
So Nick Fury was in charge of the Howling Commandos. So a lot of the guys that show up as the background characters for Cap are actually the Howling Commandos, who Nick Fury was supposed to have run. Nick Fury is an immortal in the Marvel Universe from the Infinity Formula. So he can't, I guess he can die, but he doesn't age.
So it was easy to do because you had these guys as mature 20-year-olds in World War II, but you bring them back in the 60s and they're in their 40s. So they can still run around and do stuff. And so Nick Fury and Dum Dum Dugan were... And so they kind of had to... All that's gone now. They can't really do it. So Cap has to deal with the Red Skull in the movie, just like the comic book. He's a skinny guy named Steve Rogers who wants to be a soldier, but he's way too small, but he has a big heart. And that is what Tommy Lee Jones, as the colonel, I guess he was, sees in him.
Tommy Lee Jones. He was,
and Stanley Tucci, man.
Awesome.
Love
Fantastic.
him in everything.
We also meet Howard Stark.
Yeah,
A young Howard Stark who ends up being very instrumental in creating the super soldier serum, which turns Steve Rogers into Captain America. And thus they not only do they create a superhero, but they also create a propaganda icon to help with the war effort. Right. So World War II, we get to the point where, hopefully everyone knows a little bit about Captain America, but there is a part where Captain America is trying to stop the Red Skull, and things happen, and the next thing we know, he's encased in ice and comes back in 2011. So I had issues with this movie. I don't know. I never was a big Captain America fan. I could be biased. But as I said, when we get to Avengers, Josh Whedon does a great job of making Captain America more enjoyable. I'm giving Captain America: The First Avenger a C+.
Ouch.
The movie was fun. I loved. I just when he first goes and saves all the soldiers. It's a great moment. I had a lot of fun. This was a good movie.
I didn't like the love story either. That bothered me.
I was alright.
I like that.
Yeah, I was alright.
I thought
it's way better than the Hulk love story.
And I'm sorry about I can't remember the name of the guy who played the Red Skull. I thought he did a great job. I thought the Red Skull looked really good.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with that aspect of the film.
I love the cube, the tie-in from
the
tie-in from the Thor movies, the Tesseract.
Yeah, the Tesseract.
And then we have the Cosmic
Also known as
Cube.
the Cosmic Cube.
Yeah. Sure. I don't follow the comics,
the
but
thing I thought that was weird about Cap, though, because we were talking about Thor, and Thor being this big, overblown, godlike character who they made this small movie for. Cap, they do the opposite. He is sort of the average guy with a little bit more oomph to him. He's got the super soldier serum, so he's tough and strong, but mostly he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not
You
Thor,
shot him.
he's not Hulk, you shoot him, he dies.
He's actually a little bit above Batman, you know?
Yeah, but again, he's just basically a dude, and they make him in the sci-fi movie. And this movie has a lot of sci-fi elements with the laser guns in the 40s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that was something that I didn't like about it. I liked about the first 2/3 of this movie a lot. I liked, the young, skinny Steve Rogers story. I thought that was well done. The Stanley Tucci stuff, fantastic. Special effects, making him all skinny.
That was amazing.
Amazing.
Did you read about how they did that?
No, I didn't.
They took a skinny actor and put his face right on it with CGI and follows it around the whole time. I mean, can you imagine the tracking work to do that?
It's
flawlessly.
It's unbelievable. I hope they got an Academy Award for that stuff. But that stuff is amazing. I like the propaganda Cap. I thought that was a funny way to use his character. But they spent a lot of time on that. I even like the first scene up to where he goes up and fights the Red Skull the first time. After that, the whole thing where they montage the rest of his career just irritates the heck out of me.
Yeah, they montage it just to get to the train.
It's like, I've heard from some people that the thought was that to do other Captain America movies, they may be set in the 40s, and they may be Captain America and his band of merry little men running around doing stuff. So that makes it a little bit better for me with that thought in my head. Until they do it, though, that part bothers me.
They also do what they did with the Incredible Hulk, where the Incredible Hulk keyed in on the 70s TV show. In Captain America, they do that montage, and there was a Captain America serial in the 40s too. Like in real life, you can get it on DVD,
nice.
And they had that too, and they kind of had that in the movie too, where they were kind of playing around with that, which I thought was a cool touch.
That is a cool touch. I didn't realize that.
Wasn't there in the 80s a TV movie?
There was.
America?
Yeah, there may have actually been 2 or 3.
Well, and there was an unreleased Captain America movie that you can find occasionally on DVD.
Yeah, I don't have that one. I got the Fantastic Four.
I have seen it, and one of the greatest parts about that is the way they did the costume in that. They couldn't get the ears quite right, so they have rubber ears on top of the thing. It's such a horrible, bad costume.
Brilliant.
The only thing I like about that movie is he wakes up from his ice sleep up in the Arctic or whatever, and works his way down through Canada.
In the suit?
No, he's like in his parachute jumping outfit that he had on, and he's like working his way back down to the States. Like they made it believable where he actually had to hitch his way back. It wasn't like he just bam shows up. Like in the comic book, the Avengers find him floating in the water. They just pull him in.
Yeah, I think the Submariner finds him.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The Submariner found him. That's right. Yeah.
Which was convenient because the Submariner was also a character who worked with him in the 40s.
Nice. Forgetting the fact that I'm close personal friends with Chris Evans, I still would give this movie B+. I watch it. I find myself watching it when it's on. I enjoy it.
I'm surprised by that. I thought you would end up hating it, but
I thought I would too. But when I didn't go see this in the theaters either. I bought it on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I missed it in the theaters too.
I got such a mixed reaction from people. People were like, "Nah, I didn't like it," and people were like, "I thought it was great." So I'm like, well, I don't really have a gauge to go in with expectations. So I'm just kind of like, it's probably going to be it's fine. And I enjoyed it. Yeah. There were good superhero moments of it.
Yeah, I liked it. I was so glad to finally see Cap in upgraded for 2011 in the theaters. It was good to see that, and I don't know. I thought that middle part dragged too much.
Yeah, I would have given it a B+, but after seeing the Avengers, because what bothered me about it was all that sci-fi stuff that Cap doesn't need. I'd rather it would have been more of a war movie instead of the sci-fi elements. But after seeing how they use that in the Avengers, it pumps it up to an A+ for me.
Wow.
Not an A+, A-.
Okay.
But seeing the way they use their transition actually improved it one pip for me.
Right.
So
that's probably why I gave it a B+.
Yeah, and I did enjoy it. It's a fun movie. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Enjoy the heck out of it.
We finally reached the Avengers. The big picture that just came out a few weeks ago, directed by Joss Whedon. All 5 of these movies have been culminating into this big event, and I guess it's been 2 weeks now, and it's already made $1 gazillion, and it's definitely making people happy, even people who don't know much about the comics at all.
And people have been following these characters now in the movies since 2008. So people are knowing these characters now and are invested in them, and even outside of the comic book realm, people know who Iron Man and Cap and Hulk and all these guys are. You are seeing all these characters together for the first time, and you're seeing how they get together for the first time. Loki is back. Loki's instigating trouble, mostly for Thor, but of course everyone else is going to get sucked in. And as the tagline for the Avengers themselves has always been, it's a problem more than one hero can handle. And Loki is not just back with himself. He's got this powerful source of energy, the Tesseract, which was introduced in the Captain America movies. You've got Loki, which obviously was introduced in the Thor movies. And they're bringing in some alien race to attack humanity and wipe humanity off the face of the earth. They're going to have to defend.
I thought it was a great idea making Loki the main bad guy. I think he was the perfect choice.
Yep.
Now
he's
got the firepower for it.
And basically, wackiness ensues. We've seen Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury in all the rest of the movies, generally in short cameos. And he brings all these heroes together to stop something that is bigger than even he can stop. Now, he's in charge of a group called S.H.I.E.L.D. I always forget what it stands for, but S.H.I.E.L.D. is basically...
that was kind of a running joke
a
in
giant,
the Iron Man movies.
In the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
But S.H.I.E.L.D. is basically a giant organization of world peacekeepers that defend against, big giant threats. In this case, it's going to be threats from aliens, and he's not quite sure what to do. This is bigger than even he can handle. They had teased the Avengers initiative in the Iron Man movies, and I think in Hulk, a couple of them where they had talked about that. One thing we learned through the course of this movie is that initiative was scrapped. That initiative went away, and you get introduced to some of the people behind Nick Fury who are bankrolling him, I guess. They play some role in this, and they're like, well, we didn't want to do that, He's like, but we have to do that because this is going to be a huge threat. New York City gets rained down upon near the end by, hordes of these, alien invaders, and the Avengers have to stop them.
There's like some subplots going on where you've got like Hawkeye and the Black Widow getting a little bit cozy with each other. Yeah. You've got a little running story where Tony Stark and Bruce Banner are becoming buddies because they kind of have the same kind of background.
Yep.
What was the line?
Finally, somebody who speaks English.
Yes.
Captain America goes, is that what that was?
Yeah.
Well, and the new characters really introduced in this, Hawkeye and the Black Widow actually get their own roles as themselves. Black Widow was introduced in Iron Man 2, but for half the movie she wasn't Black Widow. She got one scene in the movie where she gets to, kick a lot of butt and look good doing it. In this, she has many opportunities to kick a lot of butt and look great doing it. Hawkeye does more than just stand there in the Thor movie like he did. He has a fairly large role, and he gets to do quite a few things. And we have a new Bruce Banner in Mark Ruffalo, who I think is the best Banner
Best Banner ever. Love that choice. Great lines.
What did you like about him? What made him the best Banner for you?
He seemed more like Bill Bixby to me.
Okay.
They didn't get into the history of the Hulk in this at all.
There's
no backstory.
Nope, he just was there.
And the biggest problem that I had with it is I identify with the TV series.
Yep.
In that opening montage where his car rolls over and it's on fire and he can't lift it off, and that's why he tries to find this strength.
Right.
And apparently that's not like the comics at all.
No, not at all.
The comics are more like the movie.
Yep.
But for me, that's not what I know, and that's what I know is this. And Mark Ruffalo himself as an actor has such believability with. I believe he's a scientist. I believe he's intelligent. He has sort of a vulnerable, everyday dude.
Yep.
About him as well. I'm not a fan of Ed Norton.
Nor am I.
Just as an actor at all, I think he's way overhyped. Except for Fight Club, he was awesome.
Agreed.
It's just the way Mark Ruffalo delivers the lines in this movie. It's just so. Yes, I get him.
I absolutely agree. I thought his line delivery was fantastic. And if you go back to the first Hulk movies, Eric Bana was the first Banner in the modern movie series. And
which I thought he looked more like Bill Bixby.
Well, he did okay, but I think he delivered the lines as sort of like confused, and not that he as an actor was confused, but the character was meant to be confused. It's like this is happening to me, and I don't know what's going on, and I'm not sure because it was the first time he was the Hulk. You get into the second Hulk movie, and it was played as sullen. And, I'm so mad about being the Hulk, and I have to stay away from humanity, and it's really miserable. But when you get to this incarnation, he has a smile on his face the entire time, but it plays to the strength of him as an actor, because you can see through that smile is pain. And this is a guy who's playing through the pain. He knows he's got this, a raging beast that dwells within him from the TV show. But he's got this power of the Hulk raging underneath him, and yet he's got this weird smile on his face. It's so fantastic. It's so well acted, and his deliveries of his lines are so good.
His chemistry with Robert Downey Jr. was great.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were good friends or anything like that, but they just understood each other and completely different personalities. But they still, I believe that they got along.
And everybody in this movie, and the worry that a lot of people had was you've got so many characters rolling around, and everybody got a chance to shine. Everybody had a great scene.
Such good directing and writing, and everybody, all the actors made such... They made what time they had on screen valuable, and they were so good at playing... Well, I think it probably helped that they did play a whole movie dedicated to that character, and they were the star.
And you had to have done that. That was the right way to do this. Marvel Entertainment did the right thing by doing these movies separately first, and then bringing the Avengers movie, to bring them all together later. Doing the marathon thing was great because you could see and immediately recall, because you just watched it, all the little tie-ins that just improved the movie for you.
But Avengers is a great movie. I'm giving it an A. It's just, I wrote on Facebook, I said it was so good I forgot I needed to pee. That's how good the movie was.
That's pretty good.
That's a good movie right there.
If you're a fan of Joss Whedon's stuff from Buffy, there are some things that are going to be in there that you're going to be like, only Whedon could pull that off.
And if it wasn't for Buffy and Angel, he probably wouldn't have been able to do this, because he got a lot of that being able to pull
interesting thing, he wrote X-Men for a number of years.
Yes.
So after Buffy and Angel wrapped up, he actually went to Marvel and he got his own X-Men title. He was the creator and writer on Astonishing X-Men. But in particular, he knows these characters, and he himself is a comic book fan, so he was able to pull all that together and make it work for him.
Well, he also the series Firefly, very short run, canceled. He was able to make a movie out of that he had the same elements in this. If you just went and saw that movie, you didn't need to see the season to enjoy that movie. It was just a great movie. But if you had seen the season, you loved it even more.
Oh, yeah.
I freaking love that movie.
Yeah.
The opening
show.
scene is just brilliant. But all the stuff that he has done, and all the praise that he's gotten for this movie, and the blogs that he has written since then, everything he's written, he is just so freaking classy, but not classy, in a not classy way. He's just he is such a fan of his fans that he attributes everything to the people that have stuck with him, the people that have like really loved all the stuff that he's done, the people that he's connected with and who connect with his work. I mean, he's just such a
he's
guy.
got a very distinct style, and there are a lot of things that you kind of know that he's gonna do. And I don't want to give anything away about it. There are just a number of elements that are right in this movie. If you've seen his shows, you'll be like, that's him. That's signature stuff for him.
The humor. It was so freaking funny.
There's perfectly laid in comic moments in this movie.
I think it works with how he writes dialogue. It's so normal. It's like a conversation, but with people who are much more clever than normal people. But it's not... It doesn't seem to be grandstanding. It's not like the one-liners from Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Nope.
It's funny moments.
And you're right. They're layered moments where they've built up to something, and Tony Stark really stole the show whenever he was on camera.
It was
right up until Banner was on.
You can tell that movie is an Iron Man film.
Well, and there was, I don't know if it was a special thanks or if he actually got a writing credit for it, but Jon Favreau was either specially thanked or had a writing credit. So I'm wondering if he did the dialogue for Tony Stark.
Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely driven towards Iron Man in some respects because, let's face it, Downey Jr. is the big star in the film.
He is the big star in the film. I mean, just overall of all those people who are in it, he's the most well-known name. His movies, as far as the Marvel movies, are the oldest. He's got 2 under his belt. Everyone else has 1, maybe.
And probably most of the film goers identify with him a little bit more than some of the other characters. There's a moment in Avengers where Cap mentions, well, is really this costume appropriate for nowadays? It's not really much of a symbol in America now, It's and I thought that was pretty interesting.
Maybe a symbol is what we need.
It's a little old-fashioned. Old-fashioned is what we need.
And both him and Thor being people out of time or dimension, depending on how you look at it, don't get some of the humor and pop culture references and stuff. And there's a scene where Cap is like, "Ooh, that one I got that one." That one. And they finally managed to give the Hulk a well-rounded personality.
It was my favorite incarnation of Hulk as far as the movies go. The CGI I thought really captured
I first
the
believed
Hulk.
it.
Yeah.
When he's first running down the hall and just destroying everything, I'm like, holy crap, he's there.
Yep.
I believe him.
Yep.
So I said an A.
A plus.
A plus for
with
me as
extra
well.
credit.
And for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, there are 2 ending sequences. There's one after the credits, the initial credits, and then there's another one at the very, very far end.
Which is
So don't leave.
Which is
Don't
a
leave.
Joss Whedon staple.
Absolutely. If you haven't seen it by the time this podcast comes out, what are you doing? Take off work, get out of there, stop what
Quit
you're
your
doing,
job.
and go.
Well, that is all the time we have for this episode. Thanks again to Corey and Randy. Next month, the Dying Breed Movie Club and myself will delve back into comedy and compare the Zucker brothers' classic take on the disaster film, their masterpiece and spoof Airplane.
Surely you can't be serious.
Yeah.
Stop calling me Shirley.
With the film that inspired it, 0 Hour from 1956. We might even hit some of the airport movies as well. See you all in the movie aisles, everyone.
Oh no, I forgot to do the laundry. I am Thor. Dost thou have a problem with that?
Philip, give me back that red towel for the guest room and stop being a dork.
Yes, Mom.
Creative consultant Chris Mich. Technical director Rich Shoemaker. Special thanks to Eric Leamy, Linda Buxton, and me, Paula Burke. The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies is produced by Deep Lake Pictures Entertainment and has no connection to any of the movies, artists, or motion picture companies seen or discussed in the Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies whatsoever. Copyrights for films, images, sound bites, trademark characters, and related materials discussed in the Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies remain with their respective owners. All materials are solely used for criticism, discussion, and artistic interpretation based on the fair use laws of the United States.